We're live again.
I think so.
Okay, apologies to the public. We lost the broadcast for a little while, so we did halt and pause for a while. It takes us to, we're up to item 7, which is recommendations from Executive Scrutiny Board. I've got a copy of those, Councillor Repton, from last night. I will, as become normal, deal with each one alongside each item in the course of the meeting, if that's okay. Which takes us to item 8, which is the key decisions, and the first one is determine school admission arrangements for the city maintained and voluntary controlled schools for 2023-2024. He's just going to do that one for us. So, thank you, Andy.
Thank you, Chair. This is a standard report that comes to Cabinet in the February of each year. The Council is the admissions authority for all maintained and voluntary controlled schools, which means we have a statutory duty to consult on any changes to admission arrangements in readiness to publish the arrangements by the statutory deadline of the 28th of February 2022. A 6-week consultation was carried out and there were no objections or comments relating to the proposed admission arrangements. The only change to the proposed admission arrangements for 23-24 from those determined last year for 22-23 is the improved communication of the decision to parents. So electronically, where an email address is provided as well as by letter posted to the home address. Derby's proposed admission arrangements are consistent with other local authorities. I would ask Cabinet to approve recommendations 2.1 and 2.2.
Thank you, Andy. Any questions, queries on this? Okay, so we have recommendations on this one. Just bear with me. Remind me the number of recommendations.
Chair, there are 2 recommendations, 2.1 and 2.2.
Okay, Cabinet, we can agree those. Thank you. So be it. Good. So if you indulge me, Councillor Smale has got another appointment to go to, and we're going to we'll deal with item 9, which he's dealing with on behalf of Councillor Webb, and then we'll go to item 13, I think, which is the other one that you need to present, Councillor Smale, yeah? So we'll go to item 9 next then, adult social care fees and charges.
Yeah, that's me, Chair. So the Council has a legal duty under the Care Act 2014 to annually set a fair price for purchasing adult care services from the local provider market. This report sets out details of the funding model and proposed rates for 22-23 for standard residential nursing care and for home care services. In order to do this, the Council consults with the provider sector annually about their cost pressures. Whilst we have had a smaller response to the consultation than in previous years, which is likely attributable to the current challenges in the wider care market, our commissioning service has carried out more regular and informal conversations with care providers on a more ongoing basis, and this insight has been used to inform the proposals. We take this report to Cabinet in February each year in readiness for any changes to be implemented from April. The Council builds in identified legitimate cost pressures into the care cost model agreed with the sector. The main cost pressures related to this are the increase in the national living wage, but also some wider recruitment and retention pressures being experienced by providers due to competition from other industries. The new fees and charging rates shall be applicable from the 11th of April, which coincides with the date of DWP rate increases. I would ask Cabinet to approve the recommendations 2.1 to 2.6.
Thank you, Andy. Anything to add, Councillor Smale?
Thank you, Chair. I had some informative feedback from Kirsty McMillan last night in relation to the exec scrutiny, which I know this was debated on. Councillor Martin did ask some questions surrounding the 3% inflationary inflationary. I'll get there eventually, get my tongue untied on the uplift against its own charges, which Simon duly answered, and Councillor Kerr asked also relating to how our local area coordinators are helping along with our VCS and they are working in tandem along with our social care teams and adult social care teams to support our most vulnerable residents in the city. So nothing else to add, Chair.
Thank you. For the record, the Exec Scrutiny did look at it last night, as you mentioned, but there were no recommendations, and they resolved to note the report. Does anybody else have any queries, questions, anything to add? No. In that case, we have 2.1 to 2.6. Can those be agreed? Thank you. Moving on then to item 10. The sale of Unit 3 West Side Park, Belmore Way, Rainsway. Oh, sorry, I forgot we're going 13, aren't we? I'm just teasing you, councillors. We can keep you all afternoon. Go on then. Who's doing that for us? Simon.
Thank you, Chair. Cabinet will remember that they approved a budget for consultation on the 21st of December. And there's been a series of scrutiny and public consultations since that date. And maybe before I just go through some of the key impacts of this report, just to highlight, we got 108 responses to the consultation using our new engagement tool. 2/3 were in agreement or neutral with the budget approach, and 60% agreed or agreed with some reservations the proposals within the budget, and that's in one of the appendices. You can see more details, and in considering whether to recommend a budget to council on the 28th of February, you should take into account the consultation and scrutiny which is detailed in the appendix. Another part of this report is also Appendix 7, which is my required Section 25 assessment of the robustness of estimates and reserves. You can see I've captured the main summary in paragraph 11.2, which concludes that, in my opinion, the estimates are sufficiently robust to allow the council to set the revenue budget, capital programme, HRA budget, dedicated schools grant, and council tax for council tax for 22-23. It does say 21-22 there, so just to correct that and for the record, please. So you need to consider that assessment of my professional assessment that I'm required under my code to do, again, before agreeing whether or not to recommend this budget to council at the end of the month to set the council tax. So just having given, if you want to call it, those two precursors to the report, I'll take you through some of the major, or I shouldn't say minor changes in the budget report. So in paragraphs 4.3.1 to 4.3.4, it details the changes that have been incorporated into the budget following the budget issued for consultation. You can see there that the changes are where we've had notification of new grants or updated grant amounts that were not available at assessment, primarily the holiday activity and food programme of just shy of 1.4 million, and the supporting families budget that was increased by 300,000. There's also some small changes in respect of inflation, in respect of Children's Directorate, a provision for the Jubilee as a one-off budget to help us celebrate the Platinum Jubilee, and also some small changes in Treasury Management and reserves. But you can see that they do not make a material difference to the proposals that we went out for consultation. This report was published last Tuesday, we received the final local government settlement at 7 o'clock on a Monday night beforehand. That gave us an additional £8,000 of funding, and I didn't think it was necessary to update the paper to reflect that, and we will adjust that as we set the budget for the next financial year. Just maybe taking you through some of the other recommendations in here. The report references financial decisions that you'll consider elsewhere on the agenda. The receipt of the Environment Agency money for Oakor Phase 2, which is from effectively the Museum of Making down river of 17.7 million. That is very welcome. The Park Life project, which is the football provision on the racecourse, again securing that funding, and that's in the financial matters, and also the Market Hall report, which seeks additional funding for the capital investment in the Market Hall. Overall, when we add that to the HRA budgets that you approved in January, that means that we are forecasting over the next 3 years a 400 million capital programme funded from external funding and our own resource. The report also updates for the latest financial position, also on the report, which is that we've used a figure of a 1.8 million drawdown on reserves to fund the revenue overspend. That is forecast at the end of Q3. That is down from 4 million that was in December, and we anticipate that will come down further by the end of the financial year, so it's been updated in respect of that. Just to highlight, towards the end of the report, it talks about the Dedicated Schools Grant. The Dedicated Schools Grant is a very important part of the spend that we make in the city. Within that, you've got core schools budgets and also what is described in the report as high needs block. This is primarily the support to young people with special educational needs. And across the country, since the SEN reforms of 2014, there has been an increasing demand against the high needs block. We are in a good position that until now, that has not taken us into a DSG deficit position, but for the next financial year, it is forecast that the demand in the system will lead to us going into a DSG deficit position, that we will be creating a DSG recovery plan as required by the Department for Education as a result of that. When you have a look at the national press, high needs block overspends or DSG deficits of anywhere between 20 million plus are quite common. So we've managed this really well to date, but it is a pressure being experienced in the system. Finally, in respect of reserves, there's in paragraph 7.1.4, it details the reserves. I will just draw out the statement in there, which is that this budget assumes a drawdown of 4.352 million of reserves. 4.158 million is in respect to collection fund deficits. You'll remember in the outturn I talked about the impact of COVID in respect to collection rates for the previous year and some government support, and also the fact that we'd have to phase that over 3 years. When you take that out, only 194,000 of reserves is being used to support one-off pressures, and no reserves are being used for supporting the recurrent budget. So I think it's important that we just bring that out. And in preparing for next year, you'll notice in the December report, it did talk about the fact that we have lowered our collection rate assumptions for 22-23 to try and reflect the fact that the recovery of the collection fund, i.e. council tax and business rates, will take a while to smooth back to its pre-COVID state. So we were prudent in our forecasts for the next financial year. So subject to the recommendations being taken, considering the consultation, considering my professional assessment, noting the other bits on this agenda that will impact the budget report, it makes a recommendation that you set a budget requirement to council on the 28th based on this budget, and subject to that being passed, the council tax being levied at a 1.99% for the council element of it and a 1% adult or social care precept. I'm happy to take any questions along with the portfolio holder, and hopefully I've tried to make it as clear as possible in what is a complex report. Thank you.
Thank you, Simon. I suppose the first thing to say is thank you for the report, and thank you to your team for producing a very detailed and complicated and comprehensive report for us to use towards the budget process. And congratulations on bringing the overspend down from 4 million to 1.8 and hopefully even lower by the end of the day. So again, thank you for your efforts in that regard. Exec Scrutiny looked at this last night and came up with one recommendation, and that was in relation to what's being called the council tax rebate. Councillor Repton, did you want to explain the recommendation?
Yes, I will. I was a little surprised that Simon did mention that this evening, because he very kindly last night, when asked, to explain to us some of the difficulties that we all face. And here in Derby, like most places in the Midlands and North, we have many lower band households. So we're facing a massive logistical nightmare with very little notice and limited, to say the least, guidance how we'll get this £150 to those eligible in a timely manner. It's been called a council tax rebate, but as I'm sure Simon will explain in a few minutes, it isn't a council tax rebate at all. It's been dressed up as that nationally, but the problems being foisted onto local authorities are immense. And I believe it will stretch our services considerably, and so additional resources are required. So therefore, last night, the board put forward the recommendation in relation to what is being called the council tax rebate. Executive Scrutiny expressed its concerns about the logistical nightmare that this council and many councils in the Midlands and North face in making sure the £150 gets to the very people that it needs to get to, and puts additional strain on services in this city and elsewhere in the Midlands and North. Therefore, we call on the Cabinet to write to the Government to ask for additional resources to make sure that this can be done as swiftly and as effectively as possible. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Repton, and I can agree with a lot of what you say there, in that our officers over the last 2 years have dealt tremendously with the various tasks that government have given us to distribute grants and funding and everything else that goes along with it. And this is a serious additional one, which on the face of it doesn't look well thought out. It could have been done a lot simpler. And actually, in terms of us writing to government, then yes, I'm prepared to do that, happy to do that, in that, but on the understanding that it's not just us as an authority under pressure as a result of this. It's a nationwide thing. You rightly identify that it's the North and the Midlands, because of the council tax base, that is an additional problem. But the LGA, other authorities, MPs, and we will talk to the MPs about lobbying on this, to government to try and come up with a better solution. So we can accept the recommendation, and we'll try and deal with it. Councillor Smale probably wants to add a little bit.
Thanks, Chair. You pretty much summed up everything that I would have said myself.